Communist Party set to picket at police headquarters in Cape Town against crime and corruption. This as police are investigating the mass shooting in Gugulethu on the Cape Flats in which 8 people were killed. No arrests have been made. SABC News reporter Vanessa Poonah is in Cape Town and has more. Vanessa, what's happening where you are?
Yes, a very warm good morning to you from a very cold and wet Cape Town this morning. Members of the South African Communist Party have indeed started arriving here outside the headquarters of the police in Greenpoint in Cape Town. And a number of issues that they will be highlighting includes issues around corruption, issues around police resources, as well as issues surrounding permanent employment or the permanent appointment of a police commissioner here in the Western Cape. But joining me is the SACP Provincial Secretary, Benson, very warm good morning to you. You've started arriving here today. When you've sent out the information surrounding today's picket, there's quite a number of issues that you are highlighting. I see on the banners behind us talking about corruption. We're talking about gender-based violence. Your view on the state of policing in the Western Cape and exactly what it is you are calling for today.
Remember, the South African Police Service has 3 basic functions. One is to prevent, combat and investigate crime. Here in the Western Cape, the SAPS in its current form is incapable of fulfilling these basic mandates. And why? It is on the basis that, here amongst other things, police themselves are involved in crime and corruption. And you might be aware that in a week or weeks ago, police officers were arrested in Harare. Police officers were arrested, others appeared before the Bishop Levy's Magistrate Court. And just across day in, day out, there is police involvement. Not only that, there are also palace politics within the South African Police Service, particularly here in the Western Cape. And thus, we also observe what we define as an orchestrated attempt to deal in particular with former MK combatants and also to destabilize the police management here in the province. That is why since Mzonde Petros left, we haven't had stability in the province, right? As we speak, there's an acting provincial commissioner, there's an acting head of detectives, and we're calling for the appointment of the provincial commissioner, also the reinstatement of Jeremy Viri, who was passed by what we'd call bondstand police officers. And we're saying those things must come to an end. Also, austerity must not be used to deal with the capacity of the police. Therefore, there must be funding of the South African Police Service so that there can be more employment of police. And we're also calling on this police service to expedite the prosecution, the investigation of many court cases that include even the case of our own District Secretary, Siyabulela Suswana, who was killed last year. There are many court cases here, and there is no progress on an investigation,
Benson,
that's why we are here today.
Benson, very briefly, you're touching on quite a number of issues. Let's start with the police resourcing issue. You've highlighted that as a big problem now. When we visit areas across Cape Town, specifically on the Cape Flats, just yesterday we were out in Gugulethu, for example, where 8 people were gunned down in a mass shooting. And mass shootings, for example, is not isolated just to one area. We've seen it happening in areas across Khayelitsha, we've seen it in Philippi, etc. In terms of managing firearms, illegal firearms, because a lot of these instances are happening in the context of illegal firearms being used against communities. Your views on that and what exactly you're calling for with regards to the management around that and brazen criminality that stalks these communities?
Let me deal with the issue of firearms. One, around 2013 or so, right, there was an MP project which was headed by Peter Jacobs as well as Jeremy Viri, where a number of firearms were sold to criminals and gangs here in this province, right? And these firearms, were reported to have been used to killing about more than 1,600 people. And therefore, we're calling for the continuation of that project, and that all those who were implicated in the MP project be investigated. And we are saying the police must be resourced right? So that too, they can have machines and technology that is more advanced than the technology of criminals. If you look at the case of Colonel Chan, that the people who actually plotted his killing were much more sophisticated than the police. That's what calling for the full resourcing of the South African Police Service. And they must indicate that the many guns which were stolen from the police need to be recovered. And all those who are involved must be charged and must be arrested. And that is why we are calling for an independent vetting of all men and women in the South African Police Service. And also, the president must establish a judicial inquiry the fitness of the South African Police Service in its current form to combat, to prevent and investigate the crime, or else we risk becoming a Mexico.
Benson, I understand that you'll be handing over a memorandum with these demands. Can you just explain to us exactly who you are addressing this memorandum to? I understand that you've also invited representatives from provincial government as well as the City of Cape Town, those fears along with SAPS. Can you just explain to us exactly who you are addressing it to, and then just the timeframes in terms of when you'd like to see actioning of the demands that you are making today?
The memorandum here is going to be handed over to a person delegated by the Minister of Police, Gugulethu, right, on issues that relate to the police. A memorandum will also be given to the City of Cape Town, because the state, there is a relationship between the state of our communities, the appalling state of our communities, and the crime in our, for example, right, where there are potholes, it is easy for our people to be hijacked. We are addressing this memorandum also to a community safety. We are saying to them, there must be a support. The community safety freeze must not be a spectator in the fight against crime and corruption, but must be involved. We are directing this to the NPA. We are saying, NPA, help and work with the police to see to it that there is cases of which are brought before the are expedited. Prosecution must be quick, and people must go to jail. They must be arrested. And we are saying to Ronald Lamola at the Correctional Service that do not release people. For example, Prince Law was arrested for being involved on selling police firearms. Guess what? He has been released. That person was supposed to rot in jail because the firearms he sold, killing our people day in, day out. Just days ago in Gugulethu, about 5 people were killed, was 3 died at the hospital, right? Weeks ago in Khayelitsha, just across, and there are cases that are just underreported. That is why there is this provincial-wide picketing against crime and corruption, and that the police must begin to be effective. In Fredericksburg, there is a picketing. In Beaufort West, there is a picketing. In Harare Police Station, there is a picketing. In Pito, there is a picketing. And we are saying, pay attention to investigating police, investigate Harare Police. Why these police stations, for example, become a hub of corrupt police officials? Now, for us to have confidence on the police must be renewed. This police must be renewed. The rate of extortion is quite worrying here in the province, right? And we know that the nexus between the underworld, the criminal network, elements from criminal justice, lumpen business elements, and some politicians. And that's what we're also calling for the lifestyle audit, even of ourselves as political leaders, because others are politicians by day and criminals at night.
Benson, thank you very much for speaking to me. Of course, the Provincial Secretary there of the SACP here in the Western Cape. Just then a number of issues that they are bringing to the attention to the include SAPS management at the highest level, as well as those in provincial government and the City of Cape Town, talking about a crime that has been escalating across various areas of the flats, mentioning extortion, problem and agreement.
I have to come out, that connection is not really great, but a decision to dismiss the appeal from